When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel, and today's video, I wanted to make a video discussing Maegor's death. I'm not sure if I've actually made this video in the past. I know I've talked a lot about Maegor, but I wanted to talk about his actual death. I want to break it down. We're going to kind of reread what actually happens, the fate of Maegor the Cruel, go through all of the rumors, and come to the conclusion of how he actually died. I know there's a lot of rumors and speculations in the community, and so I'm going to try and answer that the best that I can. So let's start the video with a reading of what occurred on Maegor's last few hours. Maegor brought them together in the Red Keep one night to discuss his plan of battle. When they saw how few they were and realized that no great lords were coming to join them, many lost heart, and Lord Hayford went so far as to urge his grace to abdicate and take the Black. His grace ordered Hayford beheaded on the spot and continued the war council with his lordship's head mounted on a lance beside the Iron Throne. All day the lords made plans, and late into the night. It was the hour of the wolf when at last Maegor allowed them to take their leave. The king remained behind, brooding on the Iron Throne as they departed. Lord Towers and Lords Rosby were the last to see his grace. Hours later, as dawn was breaking, the last of Maegor's queens came seeking after him. Queen Eleanor found him still upon the Iron Throne, pale and dead, his robes soaked through with blood. His arms had been slashed open from wrist to elbow on jagged barbs, and another blade had gone through his neck to emerge beneath his chin. So what actually occurred? Now we get a number of things that are important to understand with this case. So let's paint the picture. I'll have some stuff up on screen to kind of detail how this all broke down. So Maegor, of course, is having this war council. Jaehaerys and Alysanne, and even their mother Alyssa, as well as Rhaena Targaryen, along the help with Rhaegar Baratheon, they all were marching on King's Landing, and they were going to look to take Maegor off the throne. And so Maegor tries to get any last remnant of allies that he has left. And like it said in the book, there isn't many people left to rally behind Maegor. Now, that isn't to say the whole realm was supporting Jaehaerys. It's more that a lot of the realm was either staying out of it or more likely joining Jaehaerys than they were to join Maegor. Maegor really only commanded, places that were very close to King's Landing. Places that could really be impacted if they went against Maegor. And so when you see this end up happening, and again, I think it's important to understand, they seem like they were planning for a long time. And so when we get to one of the theories on the idea that Maegor took his own life, it is relevant to understand that it wasn't like Maegor was rolling over at this point, it feels like. But as the night proceeds and all of the lords are allowed to leave, the last two people that are publicly seen with Maegor are Lord Rosby and Towers. So at that point, they are the prime suspects because, of course, they're the last people to be seen with the king. Now, I don't think that is the easiest explanation because you had the Kingsguard that were standing watch on the doors to Maegor. And also, later on, when Eleanor comes in to see Maegor, she actually finds him already dead. Now, that's what she's telling us. It could be very easily that Eleanor went in and maybe killed him herself. Now, I want to take all these theories one at a time. I wanted to kind of paint the broad idea of what was all going on at this time. So let's go with the most in-your-face theory right away. Did Lord Rosby and Lord Towers kill him? I think there's an interesting idea here just based upon the fact that, okay, his body, when Eleanor seems to have found it, seems to have been dead for a little bit of time. It doesn't seem like this was a fresh kill, or at least when Eleanor, reports the body, it seems like it's been there for at least a good amount of time. And so it would add up with this idea that Maegor is never seen leaving, and also his body was gone for a while. And you also would have to think that the lords would have a big reason to want Maegor dead, right? He had just put Lord Hayford to the death just for suggesting that they surrender, or really Maegor should go to the wall. So part of it would have been living in fear of Maegor, and also realizing that if they go through with this, they're going to lose. So I do think that that's a pretty interesting possibility. The one thing that I would look at this and go, I don't know, is that Maegor was such a physical presence. And so I almost feel like if he was to be killed, it would have to be in a way that I think would have had to be trickery. So, for instance, even though Game of Thrones does this really badly, how Jon kills Daenerys, it would have to be something almost like that where Maegor doesn't expect it. Because Maegor, remember, at this time is one of the greatest warriors in Westeros, if not the best. And so I don't think you would have been able to beat him with like brute force or strength, unless it was, okay, Maegor is maybe not armed and two Kingsguard come in, because that's also a possibility. So let's then move to the next idea. So the next idea, again, at some point during the night, Maegor killed himself. This to me doesn't make sense. If you think about the way that Maegor is described in the throne having killed him, is he has like, swords going through, or I guess I should say like spikes from the Iron Throne going through his wrists and also through his neck. How would that even happen? Unless you want to go with the idea that the Iron Throne is magical or has some way of determining who sits on it and it will try to thwart them. That's possible, but at this point, why wasn't Maegor killed by the throne a while ago? Maegor, I've made videos in the past where I think a lot of his actions are quite justified up until like his killing of Viserys, and then also when Visenya dies, like that latter half, like when things start to settle down after he defeats Aegon the Uncrowned. Why didn't it take him out at any point then? Also, the throne never kills people like Aegon the Fourth, or the Mad King, for instance. It just seems like, Maegor, of all these, kings that are quote unquote the bad ones of the Targaryen dynasty, why does it kill Maegor? It seems more likely that the Iron Throne was used as a way to cover up it being an assassination. That seems more likely. And you even think about the way the tale is spread, is that, a lot of people believe that the Iron Throne killed Maegor because it's a more fascinating tale. It's kind of a superstitious type thing. So, in my opinion, I don't think that it was the Iron Throne that killed him. Now, the next idea would be that he killed himself. And this one I think is very interesting, but once again, I actually don't subscribe to this one because it would be kind of weird. Like, Maegor, you could have killed yourself in a lot of like easier ways. Like, you would have had to think he would have had to adjust the Iron Throne to go up through his wrists, to go through the back of his head, all of those things then also have to all like get through his skin at the same time, and all have this like, it just seems a very convoluted way of offing yourself. And I also don't know if it fits Maegor's character. I personally really do like the idea that Maegor, by the end of it, kind of realizes that he can't really win. But instead of giving the satisfaction to his enemies, he doesn't allow himself to ever be beaten, right? He doesn't give Jaehaerys or Rhaegar Baratheon the satisfaction and the idea of them actually beating Maegor. It was more Maegor beat himself, and that's kind of how the history really remembers it as well. And so I actually do really like the idea that Maegor did kill himself, because I really think that maybe Maegor, by the end of it, could have reflected on maybe his actions and maybe not atone for those things. He did a lot of bad things, but maybe it's one of those ideas where he had some self-reflection on the Iron Throne. And so where I like that theory for what it does narratively, I think that it's actually a really interesting idea. It really enhances the Maegor character that I really enjoy. I love his character arc, trying to understand him as a person. I think that his death in that theory is really powerful and interesting, but I also don't find it to be all that great either, because you have to remember, Maegor still is one of the best warriors and has the best dragon. You can make an argument, if you think about the dragons in play, which Jaehaerys' dragon, Alysanne's dragon, and Rhaena's dragon, they're still vastly younger and smaller than Balerion. If Maegor was to beat them, and who knows if they'd even throw all three dragons at Maegor, because if they were to lose, well, that's basically the Targaryen line's gone. So I don't even know if Queen Valissa, I should say, Aenys' wife and the mother of Jaehaerys, would have allowed that. But even if it would have occurred, there's still a possibility that Maegor could have won the battle. And I feel like Maegor is somebody that is similar to like Stannis, who would go down fighting if he saw that there was a chance for victory. And I think there was a chance for victory. It just would have been very tough, right? It would have depended how Maegor did the battle. And Maegor would have been vastly outnumbered. So it really would have come down to his ability as a dragon rider. And he was a better dragon rider than Rhaena, Jaehaerys, or Alysanne. So there's a lot of chances he could have actually won the battle. So in my opinion, I kind of discount the idea that he killed himself as well. So moving on to the next theory, the next idea would have been, okay, so sometime before Queen Eleanor came into the throne room, he was possibly killed by the Kingsguard. I think this is the most likely theory. The Kingsguard would have been men with prowess at arms. There would have been 2 of them. They also could have caught Maegor unawares, or maybe Maegor, when he was extremely tired, he didn't expect the Kingsguard to turn on him. Maybe he wasn't armed. This seems more likely. And you even think about if it came to a situation where there was a struggle, of all of the people we've talked about, the lords, we're going to talk about Queen Eleanor here in a second, the Kingsguard make the most amount of sense. And especially if you're the lords, right? If you're going to plan an assassination on Maegor, why would you implicate yourselves being the last people to see him? If you're a lord, you're going to kind of do how, if you think about this character of Moon, who is going to be sieging basically Old Town at this time, something Jaehaerys will not really have to deal with. It kind of cleans itself up. It's the most likely theory is that he gets assassinated by the lords that are there, that were kind of supporting him, but they kind of fall out of support. You would hire somebody else to kill Maegor, or have somebody else do it. You don't want to implicate yourself. And so I kind of don't think the lords would have been involved here. I don't think Queen Eleanor would have been able to do it, even though we're going to talk about that in a second. The Kingsguard seem to make perfect sense, because the Kingsguard also then try to go to Jaehaerys' side and try to switch sides. It really shows that they were acting in their own self-interest, even though it doesn't work out for them. That was what they were trying to do. And so I do find that this theory makes a lot of sense. It also would have made and added up with when Queen Eleanor finds Maegor, his body would have been a bit more like decomposing, like it wouldn't have been a fresh death, right? So when Eleanor comes in, it makes a lot of sense. This could have happened hours into the night. And the Kingsguard, because of their vows, they're still very new, right? People look up to them quite a lot, very prestigious. The blame wouldn't fall to them, right? It would fall to others. And you even have how they place the death, right? Covering it up, making it look like the Iron Throne killed Maegor, just confusing the crime scene and putting attention away from them. And you already got to think people don't care about Maegor all that much, so they're not going to look too much into his death. They're going to take it as, oh yeah, the gods finally settled, Maegor. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's then get to the very last point, and when we actually discover Maegor's body. Queen Eleanor finds Maegor. Now, the reason I think that I actually like the theory for what it actually means is good, but the execution of the theory I don't think works all that well. Queen Eleanor killing Maegor the Cruel would very much actually be a parallel to a video I also recorded for this week, the Red Kraken. The Red Kraken dies to one of his salt wives, and he treats women pretty horribly. He kidnaps them, gives them to his men. The Ironborn are not exactly great when it comes to women. And so you think about what Maegor does. He takes a number of wives. He always blames his wives. A number of people are innocently killed because he can't have children. He's not willing to accept that fact. And so he mistreats a lot of different women. And a lot of that is going to come back to bite him, right? Rhaena is going to go over to Jaehaerys' side, which she was already kind of on Jaehaerys' side, but it's that full, she leaves King's Landing and his downfall continues, right? You think about Queen Alyssa, she was a huge catalyst in the fall for Maegor. It's a lot of the times when you look at Maegor's fall, it's a lot more about the women than it is necessarily about the men. And so having it be, one of his queens was the thing that killed him is actually a really cool idea. But the execution is not great at best. How does Eleanor kill Maegor? She can't overpower him. That's just not something that happens. So it would have had to been something where maybe she's trying to seduce him and then kills him, and then she sets up the Iron Throne then to resemble it to be the Iron Throne killed him. She could have, again, this could be a joint theory, right? It could be that Eleanor and the Kingsguard were involved. I also like that idea. I kind of thought about that on the spot, but I think it also could be one of those situations where the Kingsguard and Queen Eleanor had a plan where Eleanor was going to kind of seduce Maegor a bit, and then the Kingsguard would kind of do the rest. That could be very possible, and it also makes sense with who discovers the body, given that it was Eleanor and then the Kingsguard as well. So that could be a really big possibility. I just think that if you're looking at it from just a Queen Eleanor and her acting alone, I don't think this theory holds any water. There is a theory that's thrown out there that somehow Rhaena Not again. I want to make sure when I say Rhaena, Jaehaerys' older sister, not the Dance with Dragons, Rhaena, that somehow she killed Maegor, because all women that are like fierce dragon riders and are not the most like liked, or they're not the most like womanly role in Westeros, like they're not, more woman-like, or what we perceive as being more woman-like in Westeros, they always get this idea that, oh, they're doing black magic and she somehow assassinated. Rhaena did not kill Maegor, probably had nothing to do with his death whatsoever. Maybe she planted the seeds, maybe suggesting that idea to Eleanor or something like that. But Rhaena was not in King's Landing at this time. She didn't seem to have a whole lot of influence at King's Landing, and that'll show later on when we even get to Jaehaerys' reign. So that makes no sense to me. It just seems like more maesters don't like kind of strong female characters of the Targaryens, which there's a lot of that. So that kind of gets me to the end of this. I personally think the most likely theories for Maegor's death were likely the Kingsguard, and maybe the second theory I would throw in there is the Kingsguard with the help of Queen Eleanor. But let me know what you guys think about this idea. Personally, you guys know Maegor is one of my favorite characters in terms of I enjoy like studying the character. But let me know what you guys all think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.